Infrastructure Committee. We have invited all council members here today to join us for a presentation on the Transportation Improvement Program, Choose How You Move. This has been a big endeavor across Metro, centered around a few departments, but certainly a lot of people have been putting in a lot of work on this. So I'm looking around, we've got a whole lot of people from across Metro here today to help talk us through the plan and then answer any questions that folks have. And we'll be recognizing every member who's in attendance. There's no need to use the phrase, thank you for recognizing me, though I'm not a member. So once we get to questions, we'll be recognizing everyone. And I'll start it off by introducing Michael Briggs, who's here with us. Michael, if you could just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what you've been doing and what you've got prepared for us this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Parker. Really appreciate the opportunity to get in front of you all and talk more about Choose How You Move. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning in Mayor O'Connell's office, and I'm excited to share with you all Choose How You Move, our Transportation Improvement Program. This is an opportunity for us to secure dedicated transportation funding that we will have a positive impact on the lives throughout Nashville and even Middle Tennessee. And we know we will have good discussion today, and we will continue to work with Metro Council in the upcoming months. Everything that I'll review today has been in the mayor's remarks, so it's mostly a recap. There's a few other details, but a lot of that's also in the document that's posted online and also with the interactive maps. So I encourage you to go to the website at nashville.gov/transit. And Choose How You Move is a collaboration across several Metro departments. So I'd like for those that are also up here today at the two tables to also introduce themselves. So if we want to start over here and just kind of go around the table.
Steve Bland, CEO for WeGo Public Transit.
Hannah Schaefer, Transit Business Intelligence Analyst with WeGo Public Transit.
Felix Castroda, Director of Planning for WeGo Transit.
Amanda Vandergrift, Consultant.
Michelle Bosch, Metropolitan Treasurer.
Wally Dietz, Department of Law.
Kendra Apkowitz, Director of Sustainability and Resilience with the Mayor's Office.
Kevin Crumbo, Bookkeeping.
Laura Fox, Department of Law.
Hi, everyone. Shyam Cunnan with HDR Engineering.
Lucy Kempf, Metro Planning.
Diana Alacone, Transportation Multimodal Infrastructure.
Brad Freeze, NDOT.
Good evening, Courtney Stone, the Director of Strategic Communications and Policy at NDOT.
Justin Cole, NDOT.
Greg Claxton, Nashville Planning.
Angie Hubbard, Housing Director, Metro Planning.
Rochelle Albright, Communications Director for Metro Planning.
All right, thank you all. As you can tell, we have a wealth of knowledge and expertise that's behind the program. And so as you all have questions, we may have to toss to other Metro staff to help answer those. There's also some more staff in the audience that may also jump up and help chime in on a few questions too. I first want to acknowledge our community members who have advised us in developing Choose How You Move. We had 2 advisory committees, and they met 7 times since Mayor O'Connell announced our work to pursue dedicated transportation funding in February. Vice Mayor Henderson, I want to thank you for serving on the Technical Advisory Committee and lending your knowledge to this work. It's greatly appreciated. And both advisory committees have helped us talk through complex topics related to transit types, housing, and financing. Their suggestions have shaped our technical approach and continue to guide how we present and talk about Choose How You Move within the community. These meetings have also been televised on Metro Nashville Network, and we appreciate their candidness and the willingness of the advisory committee members to have these discussions on camera, because that's not always easy, as you all know. Our goal was for others to understand the difficult trade-offs and the deliberative approach when our residents entrust with us our infrastructure improvements. And we anticipate the Community Advisory Committee to continue to meet through November to help us troubleshoot questions and help shape our outreach approach. And so thank you to these 40 individuals. And although a small group have worked on large aspects of the plan, it's taken a tremendous amount of time, guidance, research, input, and development of materials or processes from all of these people. WEGO, NDOT, and planning staff devoted much time to guide this work and develop the best program possible. And we've been supported by Metro Finance and Legal. And Metro ITS has also helped us communicate our work with the Metro Nashville Network team and the GIS team. And so finally, many of these staff also participated in the technical advisory committee meetings and community advisory committee meetings in helping develop materials and presentations. And so thank you to each of these staff members for performing their tireless work for the city. So I have to give, this is our disclaimer slide. And so to help shape our approach and tone for this discussion, I just need to go through a few things really quickly. This presentation is more technical in nature with details. So we will have other methods that will build on this information that we present to you today to communicate facets of the Choose How You Move program with the community. So we're open to your input and how best to refine some of this information with your neighbors. Choose How You Move is a program to be implemented. It's different than a visionary planning process, where you may refine work and present for several iterations of feedback. This is a program of projects at this moment in time to meet the requirements of the Improve Act, which is state enabling legislation that allows 6 sources of surcharges specifically for transit funding. Because this is a conceptual implementation, projects, services, and costs shift over the life of the program. So the maps that you see is intended to still be flexible to respond to changing conditions. A really good example of that would be we would not want to upgrade a traffic signal, for example, if a redevelopment's multimodal transportation study requires an upgraded traffic light. We would shift those improvements to another location. So there are items that are also described that will unlock partnerships around housing and regional connections that make Nashville ready to act when our neighbors come to the table. And I need to stress also that the costs are preliminary and require state comptroller certification. And so although we anticipate a positive review, there could be something that changes with that. Finally, Choose How You Move assumes varying levels of spending to continue. This can vary annually. And so things like sidewalks, transit operations, traffic calming programs, et cetera, continue to go through the annual budgeting process. And Choose How You Move is intended to be on top of those regular items. So here are the highlights of the Transportation Improvement Program. Choose How You Move is an all-access pass to sidewalks, signals, service, and safety. It completes the Walk and Bike Nashville Priority Sidewalk Network when combined with annual spending. It upgrades nearly 600 traffic signals. It enhances transit service along our main corridors to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It also expands that transit service to be more reliable, frequent, and reach more parts of Nashville. And finally, it improves safety for all users with upgrades to intersections and construction of complete streets. So we hear about the inadequate streets and the infrequent transit. So many streets have similar conditions like this along Dickerson Pike, and our residents understand this frustration and our need to invest now in transit service and transportation infrastructure. Most Nashvillians agree that residents should be able to decide on investing in ourselves through a transportation referendum. Mayor O'Connell is ready to work with you on a solution because rent and housing have increased by more than 50% in recent years. For most households in Nashville, we spend over 40% of our income on shelter and transportation alone. And if you make less, you spend well over half of your income on those two items alone. So here we are in this process. And as mentioned, we anticipate final certification from the state comptroller by the end of May. We will work with you all, council, through the summer to place Choose How You Move on the November 5th ballot. Early voting begins in mid-October. And so this is a quick process, but the urgency of this issue requires immediate action. So how did we get here? As part of our work, we have been sharing our own transportation stories within the mayor's office, and our advisory committee members told us some of theirs, and that's what you're seeing on the screen. And we've got additional stories within the Choose How You Move document that aren't on the screen. We start from this vantage point to always ground ourselves in why we developed this program. Some of us have talked about how transportation helped us during school to get an education, or the great experiences that we've had taking transit in other cities. Others have shared the trauma from car wrecks involving siblings or other family members, harassment that they experience on the street because of the way that they look, or interstate construction that caused displacement to our families. And we have to remember that that is still part of the legacy of Nashville today. Others have mentioned the desire and vision for us to have more transportation options. So we all come to this discussion with a unique perspective and having different experiences. And so let's always try to share those stories and center this opportunity with Choose How You Move on what we want to solve, which is to improve lives and invest in ourselves. So let's quickly revisit how we got here as a city. We went from a city that had the first bus priority lanes, where even Chicago came to learn and replicate and see what Nashville had done. And we shifted our focus on moving cars. This sometimes was at the detriment of displacing homes for people, and that was mostly to get people quickly out of the city center. This led to disinvestment in our transit system. Then we made attempts to add more transportation options and catch up with technology. However, we haven't done that quick enough. So we did a lot of studies and we tried to implement. And we studied so much that we did over 70 plans that had over 66,000 pieces of input. And these plans build our foundation for Choose How You Move, where we have pulled together the best and most practical ideas. And so we are now at this moment in time to invest in ourselves in 2024 by placing this on the ballot in November. One thing to reiterate is that just because we can vote on this in November, it doesn't mean that the conversation stops around these issues. We continue to talk about transportation projects going forward, and we will need to develop preliminary engineering plans and identify the engineering solutions on many corridors and intersections. Some of the community engagement processes even require, as part of our ability to unlock federal funding, a community engagement process. And we know Nashvillians will listen and give their feedback and talk through these tough issues to improve our streets, because this won't be easy work. And those conversations continue years after the ballot. And we've been tracking our touch points and participation just since February. We want you to know that we are listening and want to ensure residents understand the positive impacts of Choose How You Move. We look forward to having more detailed conversations in many of your districts over the upcoming months. All of this work towards getting a transportation referendum on the November ballot builds upon one of Mayor O'Connell's 3 transition committees that advised for us to pursue a 2024 transit referendum. This came specifically from the How Nashville Moves Transition Committee, and we are proud to say that Mayor O'Connell is acting upon that recommendation. And so this is why we're moving forward. Our region is growing, and we will be near 3 million people in the region in 20 years. This is similar to the size of Denver today. Davidson County is no different than the rest of our neighboring counties, so we're growing too, and many of us have an experience the changes with that growth. This is what I like to call our heart attack map because it shows how this growth will increase traffic congestion. I mean, you can see the increase in red of our main travel arteries as forecasted for 2045 by the Greater Nashville Regional Council. This growth, though, also brings more jobs, and we're fortunate to be one of the top 5 cities in the nation for job growth since the pandemic. But there are challenges as we continue to grow, and these challenges are emerging around housing costs as they continue to increase both for homeowners and renters in Nashville, and we will have our housing division to talk a little bit more about that later. And our infrastructure costs will continue to grow. In many instances, individual infrastructure elements are increasing by 25% or more since 2015. And the graphic on there is from Nashville Next, from the Access Nashville plan. So in thinking back to that time, to 2015, and Nashville Next had finished a 3-year process that was done by planning staff and adopted by the Planning Commission. It laid out a framework to connect areas that are in orange. So these would be like around Rivergate, Hickory Hollow or Global Mall, Bellevue, Green Hills. And it laid out how we connect those centers and the blue lines. So Dickerson Pike, Gallatin Pike, West End, Nolensville, Murfreesboro Pike are some of the blue lines. What we did not do with Nashville Next is we did not specify the transit mode, such as being bus or rail at the time. It simply outlined the need to do high capacity transit, which is meant to be more frequent and reliable transit service. So to help depict this planning principle of connecting transportation options with development, this shows how frequent transit is more efficient as you redevelop along these corridors. So this graphic is not meant to show all transportation modes, but specifically depicts transit and the efficiencies you gain by moving people through high capacity transit. So it's difficult to service areas that are spread out with single family homes with a fixed route transit service. As you have more development along a corridor, you can increase service and you can increase its frequency, although it can be infrequent. As you continue to get more and more development and more people living in the area, you can provide more frequent service and even in some instances putting it in its own dedicated lane. And I would argue that we have a number of corridors that are likely heading in the direction of the box that's outlined on your screen. And I'll show you a couple of examples. So development that was forecasted with Nashville Next has aligned in many instances with those blue corridors that were part of the concept map. And so this is Dickerson Pike in 2017. This is Dickerson Road in 2022 with housing that's now near the street. And so this photo depicts the block before sidewalks were installed by the developer and NDOT completed the Hawk crossing signal. So you can now see just a few weeks ago, someone is crossing the street at this location. And this was triggered by our development related improvements. However, as that person continues along to walk across the street and along the corridor, there is no sidewalk. Hold on, I forgot. Tell the computer to be quiet. And so you can see, she is walking directly adjacent to high-speed traffic. And so we have to begin to solve how to invest beyond just the development site. Choose how you move is how we begin to accelerate those investments. So here's another example on West End. This is in 2016. It's mostly dominated by fast food restaurants with drive-throughs. So most people are arriving by car to these destinations. And this is a very different type of mobility and development pattern than what we have there today. There are now hotels, residences, and restaurants that you can walk among and cross the street. But we've similarly not made investments in the transportation system to connect beyond those areas that have rapidly changed like this on West End. So Choose How You Move is the solution to connect our growing city through sidewalks, signals, service, and safety. And so the map on the right shows many of the projects and services throughout Davidson County. I still encourage you to visit the website or scan the QR code to read through the Transportation Improvement Program. And I'll show you a bit later how to use the interactive map. But let's first talk about the 4 S's that we have mentioned. So the first one is sidewalks. We're adding or upgrading 86 linear miles of sidewalk, which is about the same distance as from downtown Nashville to Cookeville, Tennessee. These sidewalks are within a half mile of the all-access corridors, which are our busiest streets with the most frequent transit, and a quarter mile of other identified transit improvements. 1 out of every 3 Nashville residents will also have direct walkable access to a transit stop because of Choose How You Move. And we'll have a 50% increase in walkable neighborhoods. And so nearly 60% of these new or upgraded sidewalks will be in traditionally underrepresented neighborhoods. This is also how we complete our Walk and Bike Nashville's entire priority sidewalk network, in addition to our regular capital spending. So we have a board. If you were at the public launch event, these boards were there. They're also in the back, so I encourage you to look at that on your way out as well. The next S is signals. And we've never had a chance to modernize our traffic signal system at this scale before. Modern systems use technology to learn traffic patterns and manage demand in real time. And so by upgrading nearly 600 traffic signals, we'll all experience more green lights. We have about 900 signals countywide, so 2/3 of them will be upgraded with Choose How You Move. Also, we will be putting 36% of the upgraded signals in areas where a high number of traffic deaths and serious injuries are occurring. And so we can also improve safety for all as we make these upgrades. So smart signals make it better for drivers, and they also communicate with transit vehicles to keep them moving reliably and quickly. The upgraded signals will tie into NDOT's Traffic Management Center, opening later this year. And at the center, NDOT can see where traffic is heaviest and adjust our system in real time to keep us moving. Similarly, there's also a board in the back on the traffic signals that you can look at. Our next S is service. And so we're going to establish 54 miles of all access corridors where everything is improved, meaning better sidewalks, signals, safety, and service. The entire route is designed to move people faster and safer, with transit vehicles arriving reliably every 15 minutes or better around the clock. We'll also make these improvements on Nashville's most heavily used roadways, where we currently see 80% of Nashville's transit ridership. So this includes corridors like Murfreesboro Pike, Gallatin Pike, Nolensville Pike, Dickerson Road, West End, Charlotte Pike, and Clarksville Pike. And where it makes sense, we'll consider transit-only lanes designed with local neighborhoods in mind. You'll travel the length of Murfreesboro Pike 12 minutes faster than you can today, and we'll also have improved safety for all users along the way. We're going to build 12 modern transit centers at key locations throughout the city. This is giving us a choice to travel directly from neighborhood to neighborhood without having to route through downtown. You can already see an example in North Nashville where this spring we welcome new crosstown routes in anticipation of the opening of the Dr. Ernest Rip Patton Jr. Transit Center. And when it opens in a few weeks, it will change your thinking about how bus stations look like and what they can do. We're also going to build 17 park and ride facilities located near the high-capacity transit routes so that more Nashvillians can access transit even if they don't live near a bus route. So the park and rides will connect residents to the frequent transit network when it makes sense for their travel needs, even if they mostly use a car to get around town. So think about some of these locations connecting you to events downtown and not having to pay for parking. One quick note on the park and ride facilities, we are updating the maps. We've realized that those have gotten misaligned, so that's something that we will correct with the information that's online. We're also going to double the hours of high frequency daily service and increase total bus service by almost 80%. We're going to add more express service and prepare for regional service when our neighboring counties are ready to act. So that's what those arrows are on this map. We want to connect to our neighbors. We're also expanding WeGo Star commuter rail service for 7 days a week and special events. And the WeGo Access Paratransit program will expand 24 hours a day, 7 days a week availability. We'll expand WeGo Link, an innovative partnership with Uber, for more curb-to-home service for riders in areas of our county where bus routes, bus stops, or frequent transit may not be directly nearby. And so the current zones are on the map on the right. Through direct access to transit centers and bus stop improvements, we're investing in communities that have borne disproportionate burdens associated with our city's growth. And so you add those investments to the other service enhancements like connecting people earning a low income to unlimited rides on WeGo Transit. And this is how we bring the cost of living down to our residents and meet the demands and needs of a 24/7 workforce. And so there's two boards in the back that are related to service. One that's titled 54 miles of all access corridors, and then another one that has getting you there faster. So let's talk about the final S, which is safety. Choose how you move is how we expand mobility options and safety at the same time. We're going to redesign 35 high injury intersections to reduce the risks because 59% of our fatal and serious injuries occur on 6% of our roads. We're going to build out 39 miles of complete street projects along our high injury network, and this supports Mayor O'Connell's Green and Complete Streets executive order signed in January. And those complete streets will also make significant improvements to our bikeways network, adding 35 miles of new or upgraded bicycle facilities. And we're going to improve safety for people using transit, whether they're on a vehicle at the transit center or at a bus stop. We're going to upgrade 285 bus stops to improve lighting, weather cover, and real-time location tracking. And there's a board in the back also about safety. So there are additional components to choose how you move. We will unlock nearly 26 acres of land with new transit centers for future housing or parks. This also prepares WeGo for joint development agreements at appropriate transit center locations. And so more affordable housing and other community needs can be delivered right next to transit centers. Choose How You Move also enhances WeGo's fare system, technology for combined payment systems, and it adds real-time customer information for WeGo Access. So now let's talk about how we begin to implement. This is really how we begin to catch up on our transportation to-do list. We catch up in a big way, and we make our existing funding go much further. We're able to scale up and make transformational improvements happen faster. The program is designed to make a year-one impact, including service enhancements, safety and lighting improvements, some sidewalk development, and the introduction of traffic and signal improvements. Within 2 years, we'll have substantial bus service improvements such as expanded hours and frequency, continued sidewalk and signal installations, and the development of the first complete street project. Within 5 years, we'll have more than 150 signals upgraded and modernized, along with an improved traffic management center. And the first all-access corridors will begin high-frequency service on West End, Charlotte Pike, and downtown between Elizabeth Duff Transit Center and Sobro. Within 10 years, we'll have 60 miles of new and upgraded sidewalks built above and beyond NDOT's regular sidewalk program. More all-access corridors will begin high-frequency service, including Murfreesboro Pike, Gallatin Pike, and Clarksville Pike. At 15 years, we'll have upgraded nearly 600 traffic signals, and we'll have secured 78 miles of the Vision Zero high-injury network with safety improvements. And we will have completed all 86 miles of new sidewalk. We'll have implemented high-capacity transit on Nashville's busiest corridors, with Dickerson Pike and Nolensville Pike improvements coming online. And so these are practical steps that we will make that will be a difference in all of our commutes and also in our pocketbook. So I'm now going to ask Michelle Bosch with Metro Finance to come up and talk through some of our financial considerations.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. So we wanted to give you a quick overview of our financial, how do we fund this program? And for us, it starts with dedicated funding. We can't get this program off the ground without a dedicated funding source, which we have found to be the sales tax surcharge. This surcharge of half a penny will fund the program as you've heard it this afternoon. And we're expecting it that as of today, 2024, if we were to implement this 15-year plan, it would cost about $3.1 billion. Once that plan and program is complete, then we expect that it would cost about $111 million a year to keep it running. Not only is the dedicated funding very important to get the program running, but it's also very important for us to have access to federal and state grants. And without having a match source, we can't apply for a lot of these grants that are available to us. And this is how we bring federal and state monies back to Nashville. I will show you the rate right now for local option sales tax is 9.25, which is considerably lower than our surrounding counties. And so the half a penny increase would just put us in line with the rest of the counties in the metro area. I'll remind you of our timeline. I will add our office is working furiously to get all of the information to the comptrollers to get their approval. Once that approval is complete, then we can bring back to this body all of the details as approved by the comptroller. And finally, I wanted to share that while we are still waiting for the comptroller to approve the plan and review it, the plan will be reviewed by legal and all of the ordinance will be submitted to this office.
Thank you, Michelle. So just want to emphasize that our outreach will continue, and you will see us throughout the summer months to try and talk about the different impacts of the program. We're developing a train-the-trainer session that will soon launch, and this will help you and others talk about the program. And we're going to translate some key materials into other languages as well. You will see the Choose How You Move bus out in the community over the upcoming months. And so this was Mayor O'Connell at Earth Day at Centennial Park this past Saturday. Also want to make sure you can request a transit talk via Hub Nashville or by emailing transit@nashville.gov. And we will have a presenter come to your meeting or location. So let's quickly go back to these stories and imagine new ones, or they're updated ones because of Choose How You Move. We can envision how our residents in Madison might be better connected to work now in Hermitage. We can see commute times improving on Murfreesboro Pike from Antioch to downtown. We can also envision walking our children to schools and connecting our workers to frequent bus service on Nolensville Pike, so you don't have to worry that you just missed the bus and making it on time to work. So Choose How You Move is Nashville's transportation improvement program, and it's our best opportunity to act now. So another reminder to go to the website, scan the QR code. So nashville.gov/transit has all the information there. And we'll continue to refine that and provide additional materials as you're talking to residents in your district about the program. I'm going to transition now into a demonstration on the interactive map. So let me switch screens. So when you go to the nashville.gov/transit website, this is where you will land. There's currently a link here in the corner that has interactive maps, and we're working on getting this updated to become the link for the interactive maps. This still has the draft maps on here, and it has background information if you want to dive through that. When you get to the interactive map, it brings up different ways that you can learn and explore the different projects that compose Choose How You Move. So we've tried to provide some framing as to the sidewalk improvements and give a few examples of what this looks like. And so in this example, for sidewalks, looking at both Dickerson Pike and Bellevue. Then as you scroll further down, there will be an interactive map that comes up that just has sidewalks on it, and you can zoom in and out on here and explore that within that one particular window. The other thing you can do is if you go back to home, you can select any of the other components. It has a very similar setup. So if you go to service, talks about, in this instance, transit centers and more partnerships coming. The map with transit service comes up. You can zoom in and out there. If you want to just explore the map itself, if you go to interactive map at the top, it'll let you choose your area, and it's laid out by the community plan boundaries that planning has used over the years. And so if you select, and I'm looking at this from far away, I think it says Madison. This is my new bifocal contacts coming in handy. Just talking about that earlier. It'll zoom into the Madison area, and you can go all the way down to street level and look at what is there. If you click on it, it will give you a little bit of information. There are both planned and upcoming sidewalks that are included on the map, in addition to the Choose How You Move ones. If you want to explore it by your district, you can select your district here as well. And it will, I don't know which district I've selected, but it will zoom in to that. There's also a link up here to stay informed. It kicks you back to the main site. So all of this goes back and forth. With that, I am going to transition back to the slideshow because we are going to also do a little bit on housing, and then also talk about how to ride the bus.
So I'm seeing some hands. I think the intent was to run through the full presentation and then get to Q&A just to make sure that we're not breaking it up and pushing parts of the presentation back too late. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll finish the presentation and then start the queue up.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Planning's Housing Division to also come up. Or actually, Greg is not with Housing Division, but he's welcome to come up.
Good evening, everybody. Greg Claxton with Nashville Planning. Director Hubbard and I will be talking through the next two sections. We're going to start broadly with sort of the regulatory or market rate housing side of things, and then transition to kind of the affordable housing side of things. I'm going to echo some of the things that Michael spoke to earlier about sort of the broad context for how we think about transit in context of managing our growth and in the context from Nashville Next. And so, as he said, we have what we call the growth and preservation concept map. It identifies kind of a way to manage growth by connecting corridors and centers through transit, and sort of using that to create the kind of places that people told us when we were going through the public process they wanted to live in. And so I want to hone in on a specific way that we think about how transit and development work together to create these kinds of places. So first, as just sort of a starting point, as you sort of build out, you have residential density in different parts of the county. That at a certain point becomes something that you can serve with transit. Having people close together works to serve them with transit. As you have those folks close together, services can also follow. These may be public services like a library, or these may be public services like a library, or they may be private services like a grocery store or a restaurant. And then as you have those services, like the kinds of places that people go for their daily needs or weekly needs, that then becomes attractive for residential development to follow. And so as you have those in place, you get to a positive sort of virtuous cycle of those things building on one another. So you've got the density, you've got the residences, transit and services follow, but then transit and services kind of create a reason for more residential to follow, which allows kind of the transit service and the other services to improve as well. So you've got kind of a positive cycle. And so that kind of linkage between development, daily needs, places that people want to be in, and transit service is the key to what we were trying to do with Nashville Next. As Michael said, a lot of the way that we've been building out over the past 5 to 7 years reflects that. So this map shows the location of multifamily permits throughout the county with a slightly older version of the all-access corridors and frequent transit network. The circles in red are the multifamily permits that are within a quarter mile of the frequent network, or within a Nashville Next center. So the overwhelming majority of multifamily permits have already been in places that are transit supportive. Now, that's not to say that the transit system is working perfectly as well as we might hope to meet their needs. Frequency, reliability, and distance of travel may still be issues, but it's how we're trying to sort of evolve the system together. I'm going to transition to talk a little bit about how all of these pieces fit together to improve household affordability. And so just to start with transportation costs, the core idea here is that living close to transit allows households to save on their transportation costs. So already today, Nashville households that are close to transit lines spend $200 less per year on transportation than similar households further away from transit lines. If you look to peer cities, Denver is another city that built out more or less around the automobile, similar to Nashville, but 20 or 30 years ago began investing heavily in a transit system. Today, for auto users, they spend a similar amount in Denver as auto users do in Nashville, but households close to transit in Denver save more than $700 per year. So again, investing in the transit system can pay off for those households close to transit. And then if we get to the point where allowing a typical two-car household, as they start thinking about, one of their cars gets to the end of its life, if they have the opportunity to reduce down to a one-car household, so they don't have to buy a new car to replace that, savings can be substantial, up to $1,000 a month. On the market rate, sort of housing affordability side of things, generally when we seek to, as we review planning cases, as we seek to align with Nashville Next, generally we would seek to allow more housing close to transit. And so one of the ways that works for affordability is that modestly scaled apartments and townhomes close to transit reduce the cost of housing in two ways. One is that they lower land costs compared with houses with large yards. And the second is that they offer lower construction costs compared with high-rise development in downtown and midtown. And so it's kind of where those two come together, you have a natural spot where just the market on its own can deliver something that's somewhat more affordable than, kind of other development today. That's not to say it solves our affordable housing problems, but it helps sort of leverage the power of the market to get us further along. And then I would just note, as council members know, about a month ago, y'all passed RS 2024-288, requiring a housing and infrastructure study to identify obstacles to housing development with a report back to you all by March of 2025. And then the last note I'll end on before passing over to Director Hubbard is that as we seek to improve kind of the operations of the private market, that extends benefits to affordable housing providers as well. And so making it easier for the private market to build also makes it easier for affordable housing providers to build, so that every dollar of subsidy through Metro, through the state, or through the feds goes further, produces more units, or gets to deeper levels of affordability. And then similarly, Think Tennessee a few months ago released a report encouraging medical, educational, and faith institutions to build housing on their sites, many of which are also along corridors or close to them, providing another way to sort of think about how these corridors and this program supports affordability overall. And with that, I'll pass it to Director Hubbard.
Thanks, Greg, for laying that groundwork. Good evening. I'm Angie Hubbard, Housing Director. I was here a little over, almost 2 months ago with a really in-depth presentation on our work over the past 2+ years. So this is just going to be a very condensed version, hopefully a teaser for you to go watch that 2-hour video when on a maybe a rainy Sunday afternoon, but it is full of lots of information. But what I really wanted to start with and draw your attention to, and I know there's a lot of text on this, and I'm sure this will be on your resource, but what we mean when we talk about affordable housing. Lots of terms are thrown out: workforce housing, attainable housing. You will not hear our division use either of those terms. We're going to say affordable housing because that's what we mean. So we use the area median income as our baseline. Using this one person example, breaking it down by hourly wage, it's not until you get above 80% of our area median income that you can afford our average monthly household costs, which are in that top bubble. Average rent cost is around $1,500 a month, and then average homeownership costs around $2,700. But let's focus on the people, the associated jobs, and those hourly rates. Someone working full-time, earning minimum wage, is at 30% of our area median income. This is what we call deeply affordable housing. This is the hardest to finance, the hardest to create. We're looking at the people that make our city run, who need the housing the most. So when we're talking about the alignment of transit transit options and housing opportunities. These are really who we're targeting when we talk about affordable housing. We're meaning housing that is restricted through various different legal or contractual mechanisms to households earning at that 80% AMI or below so that we can create and preserve housing security. So we have this actually on our website as a resource also for you. Okay, I'm trying to navigate over. Let me snooze. Always have to lay the groundwork because these are the most common questions we have. So I'll start with what we can't do. We don't have the ability to regulate the private market to create affordable housing. These are state preemptions. We cannot require affordability as part of any rezoning or any even bonus zoning opportunities. We can't require private landlords to establish rents caps. We cannot intervene in a private sale. So if someone is selling an older, affordable, naturally occurring that's not deed restricted property where rents tend to be lower, we can't intervene and require them to add affordability in. And we cannot add any tenant protections that are greater than what's in the Uniform Residential Landlord Tenant Act. These are for properties that have no public subsidy or incentive or on metro land. So you can see the benefits of when we can insert ourselves and make some rules, right? So this, some of these opportunities to create housing on some of the property that can be acquired is really an opportunity to capture. These are the ways that our division, with a focus on housing security for all Nashvillians, these are really the four tenets that we're tackling this from: building new, preserve existing. When we lose our existing housing stock or when someone loses the housing that they have, it's so much harder to make that up, or we're so far behind already. Increasing access are also those things that are not the sticks and bricks part of it, but it's the housing discrimination that still exists in our community. It's the even though when we do have affordable housing providers, but sometimes they require 3 times the rent to get in. It kind of defeats the purpose of having affordable housing. And then promoting that stability where we will see market pressures, especially where we see investments come. What are those interventions that we can do? So this is a different moment in time than in previous years because we've never had a division within the city focused on these things and how we can walk alongside these tremendous opportunities that we have to invest. So we do have, we're actually tracking our progress now, thanks to some work that actually council passed legislation that requires us to do a dashboard. The link is at the bottom. And, but our progress so far, when the Affordable Housing Task Force report was issued in 2021, we were maybe putting about 1,300 units in the pipeline. We're now at 3,500 units, and we're hoping to get up to that 5,000 units annually. That's either funding new construction or funding the preservation of units, because it takes a good 18 to 24 months to build. So whatever we can keep in place and rehab and preserve or convert, we're also looking at those opportunities. Michael, I don't know if it's intended for me to drive around the dashboard or not. If there's time, if not, we can make sure that council members know where that link is. And we have a website as well. These are some of our tools. Most of you are familiar with the Housing Trust Fund. It's been around now for 10 years. We have a process that when a developer is doing an income restricted or eligible affordable housing, we have a priority review process. They can be referred to our office. We'll write a letter. Then it can go to the various development services departments for that priority review on certain types of reviews, not all of them. And then a new tool, the Mixed Income Pilot. That's a tax abatement program that buys down affordability in some of these market rate units that we're seeing to come online. Connecting housing to infrastructure, that a signal on Dickerson Road that was actually in coordination with NDOT funded through this program that allows affordable housing developers to have a participation agreement with the city to do some of that enhanced infrastructure. Our soon-to-open Catalyst Fund, which will be a brand-new low-debt product that developers can tap into, very nimble access to be able to participate with the market. Real estate developer, if there's a piece of property that's for sale, that we have now a fund that a mission-driven developer could tap into and be able to compete in that purchase. We have some ARPA initiatives that have been focused on older adults, families, and homeownership opportunities for populations that have typically had barriers to home ownership. And then I'm going to finish talking about the Unified Housing Strategy. You've heard us previous. We now have a contract with a consultant. So you will be seeing lots of information coming out about how to be engaged in opportunity. This is going to be an effort that is simultaneous with a lot of the effort around the our transit talks, and we're working on ways to align so there's not meeting fatigue. We're working with our Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity to make sure that our engagement plan is reaching the populations that often don't come to the table and talk about their housing journeys, to make sure that our documents are translated in all the languages that are spoken here in Nashville. And, you know, this is truly a serendipitous opportunity to address comprehensively, as Michael and Greg both mentioned, a household's two largest costs, housing and transportation. So we just wanted to give you a high-level overview of what we're doing in this space and how the housing intersects with this work.
Thank you both. And then we're going to end with just a quick presentation on how to ride WeGo public transit. So Felix Castrodad with WeGo is going to go through that for us, and then we will get to your questions.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening. I know you're eager to ask questions, so I'll be brief with my section. I know a lot of you have a pass that allows you to ride the bus, and I know a lot of you are avid bus riders. I've seen some of you on my rides to the soccer games for Nashville Soccer Club, so thank you for your support. But I know that riding the bus can be a little intimidating, and sometimes if you don't know where you're going or how to get there or whether you're going to get stuck or not, so it's important to know that thing. And I want to emphasize that we have a particular training program called WeGo Navigators that they can meet with anybody or any group that needs that, and they can teach you specifically how to ride the bus. And they give you very great experience, starting with, you know, how you get to the bus stop, how you pay your fare, you know, how you get off the bus, things like that. So I encourage anybody that would like to take advantage of that to do so. So we have a very good coverage of when you look at how big our county is, and I would say that we have very good coverage. But one thing that you may not be aware is we have a different, you know, we have 36 bus routes, including those that operate in Davidson County and those that go outside to other counties. But we have kind of a family of services within those routes, and we have frequent routes that operate about every 15 minutes or better on the major corridors. We also have local routes that operate more on the local roads and also between 20-60 minutes. So they run less frequently and meander a little bit more. We also have connector routes, and they do exactly that. They connect to those frequent routes. Mostly you can have a neighborhood route like Route 76 in Madison that operates in the neighborhood, or you can have a crosstown route like Route 75 Midtown that connects from Hermitage Avenue south of downtown and meanders kind of a semicircle all the way to North Nashville, for example. And those are intended to not go to downtown and provide additional services outside. We have express buses that are limited service, also limited stops, and those are mostly our regional routes connecting to other counties. We have shuttles, the Star shuttles. These are specific free buses that connect to the WeGo Star at Riverfront Station. And one serves the north part of downtown, and another one serves the Midtown West End area. We have the rail, Wigo Star, connecting Lebanon and Nashville, and we also have our Wigo Access, which is our paratransit service, door-to-door service for people with disabilities that cannot ride the fixed route service. One thing that we've been working over the last year and a half is on upgrading those little blue signs that say bus stop. And you pretty much don't know, if you get to one of those, you have no idea where you are, where you're going if you haven't ridden the bus. So we are taking care of that, making it better. We're coming up with new signs that have the new, the WeGo scheme. Also more information about the direction of the bus, which routes are serving that particular stop. We have a QR code that you can scan and get information directly on our website, customer service number if you need to call, and the little bus sign on the back of the sign itself. So if you're walking in a different direction and you have no idea, since you look at any sign from behind, they all look the same. So this allows you to know that that is a bus stop. We also have a program called WeGo Link that Michael touched earlier. We have 13 zones throughout the county. And if you remember the graphic that Michael showed with the density and transit, there's areas of our county that are very difficult to reach for transit route, where having a bus route doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's hard to justify that expense. But we know that there's people there that will still need to access the bus, and there's opportunities for people that may have a need to access that, but they don't have that ability. So we have a partnership with Uber and another company called Mobility Solutions to provide this service. If you are in a designated zone, as long as your trip begins and ends at an established bus stop, you can ride an Uber for $2 or the Mobility Solutions for $2. And we pay the rest above that up to $10. And if you don't have a credit card or a smartphone, or you have a wheelchair and you need an accessible vehicle, you can do the same by calling Mobility Solutions, and the same service is provided. So if you go to our website, you can download a voucher, and once you have that voucher on the Uber app, you can, it stays there, so every time you're gonna use it, it comes up and gives you that $2 price. One thing that we completed recently is the implementation of our Quick Ticket, which is our fare collection program. And it allows for a lot of things to make it easier for riders, including faster boarding, e-payment options, reloadable smart cards. It's account-based, which that means that you create an account and you get access to not only discounts that are provided in the way of fare capping. Once you reach a certain number of rides, it doesn't charge you anymore because it assumes you've met what it would cost to ride for a full day pass or a full month pass. But also, if you lose your card or whatever, you can cancel your card, and you don't lose the money that you have already on your account. And you do not only have, we have ticket vending machines at our WeGo Central in downtown, and customer care can help you at the window. But we also have an extensive retail network in other places and neighborhoods where you can buy cards, you can reload your card, so you no longer have to go to downtown to do that. So you can do it in your own neighborhoods through places like CVS and Walgreens and so on. So a couple of things I will mention if you're gonna ride. First, plan your trip. We have we partner with a transit app, which is it's an app that specifically, and it's used throughout the country in other transit systems. You can plan your trip. I'll just show you a quick screenshot. If you are planning to attend the Ticket to Ride event on Friday, I'm showing you how to ride from WeGo Central to the Donaldson station on Friday. So it gives you the options. You put, where you want to go, your address, or from where you are. You can choose whether you leave now, when you want to leave, what day, when do you want to arrive, and it gives you the options. It tells you when to start walking. Once you're on the bus, you can track where your bus is with geolocation. It prompts you when when your stop is coming, so be ready. So it's pretty useful. Or we can also have paper schedules that have all that information as well. Arrive promptly. Always assume a few minutes before your bus is coming that you need to be there, so you don't want to miss the bus, especially those that do not come every 15 minutes or better. Be on the lookout. We have signage in front of our buses that say which bus it is. We have some buses that come to the same stop, so you want to make sure that you get on the right one. Wave to the driver if you're not sure. They'll be happy to assist you and make sure that you're on the right place. have your payment ready. Quick ticket, as I mentioned, is the best and the easiest, but we still take cash, although we do not provide change. So one-way fare is $2. So if you put in a $5 bill, thank you for your donation. Next time, make it a 10 or a 20. But you're not going to get change back. So understand that. So with Quick Ticket, you're always going to be accessing some additional discounts. Once you always allow people to get off the bus before you get on. Do not eat, smoke, or play loud music. So, keep your seat open for other people to be able to use it. So some courtesy reminders. One that people are usually nervous about is how do I get off? Pull the cord. We have cords on either side and the inside of the bus that are very accessible if you're sitting or if you're standing. So all you need to do is, as your stop is approaching, just pull it and it'll rings a signal to the driver, alerting them that a stop, somebody requested a stop. Fairly easy, and some buses have a button on the poles, so you can press that also. If it doesn't come up, just make sure you yell, and the driver will make sure to stop and do it before your stop. Otherwise, you're gonna have to walk a little bit longer. And then as you exit the bus, just make sure you take your stop and never cross in front of the bus, please. It's always a safety issue. But otherwise, I mean, if you plan it well and it's a great alternative to driving the car when it works for you. I do it all the time, so really good to do. We have pocket schedules as well for every route with maps, with time points that tell you when the bus is going to come at what particular point. So we don't have the time for every particular stop. So time points do that. So any stop in between, so you have to make kind of an assumption for that. But usually the buses hit those time points at the time established in the schedule. And you can show on the schedule shows you whether it's going to downtown or from downtown, so you know which direction and the specific times of the day, and you can see what the frequencies are based on that schedule. So fairly easy to do. And again, we have a QR code that we have a lot of this information on our website. You can go and there are frequently asked questions and videos to show you how to do that, including the one for, we have bike racks on all our buses. So if you want to make it multimodal, shows you how to operate a bike rack so you can put your bike on it. And when you get off, make sure to tell the driver you're getting your bike. Otherwise, they may just drive with it on it. So hope this was informational and looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Briggs, are we ready to move into Q&A? Is that conclude the presentation?
Yes, I'll just mention Ticket to Ride. So join us for that on Friday. So a number of us will be going from downtown out to Donaldson and meeting up at Fat Bites there. And then we are at the end of the presentation. So just encourage you again to check out the website. Really quickly though, each of you do have a map at your desk of your district that has a one-pager. Also has a zoomed in version of the map. We've also got a sign-up sheet for if you want to talk with me one-on-one. We can do it virtually or in office, talk through some projects, questions that you have about Choose How You Move as well. So want to leave that open as opportunities coming up to go more in depth on the program and how it impacts your district.
All right.
And thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Briggs, for joining us today. And so a couple notes about the Q&A. So this meeting was scheduled on the second day of Passover. So I've already heard from some members that we're going to try to front load recognition for questions. Anybody else who has a familial, religious obligation this evening that they're looking to get to, if you could just let me know, and we'll put you at the front of the queue. Okay, so thank you. And we've got a lot of folks here. I've seen a bunch of hands go up. I'm doing a manual queue here on paper. I don't have the screen working, so just please be patient with me. And if we could just dispense for the sake of time with the custom of saying thank you for recognizing me, although I'm not a member of this committee. I do appreciate everybody for being here this afternoon. So if I could see hands, I'll just say your name once I've got you, and then you can put your hand down. Let's see, Councilmember. Got you. Councilmember Allen. Bradford. Councilmember Truffle, gotcha. Gotcha. Councilmember Sepulveda. Councilmember Cash. Councilmember Spain. Councilmember Vo. Is there anyone else seeking to be recognized? Okay, cool. Well, we'll start with that. We'll go first to Councilmember Cortez. I hope I said that right. I apologize if I didn't.
You did, thank you. Director Briggs, what type of time savings will be gained from drivers with the updated signal system?
So we have factored in some of those benefits. I'm going to look to the project team if we've looked at the transit system. So Sean, is that something that you're able to address? If you come up to the mic,
we can
please.
turn this microphone on for you. And if you'd just introduce yourself, please.
Sure. So for all travelers, whether or not they're traveling on a transit vehicle or a personal vehicle, we're looking at on average savings of 20%. And those savings may be more acute for those who previously were in transit vehicles, but now are being accelerated. So that 15 to 25% range is generally acceptable within the confines of what we've modeled. All of those savings would be subject to, final modeling and preliminary engineering at the specific corridor level. But at this level, that's a reasonable estimate. Fair?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I had Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is for Ms. Bosch. We've had some people ask if there were other funding mechanisms possible, perhaps sales tax is seen as regressive, and why can't we do a property tax? If you could give just a thorough answer, or Kevin as well, either of you. I would love for the public to hear why that's not an option. Or if it's not an option, maybe it is.
Yes, so I will add the Improve Act as passed by the state of Tennessee does not allow property taxes for the tip. There were only 6 revenue sources that we could pick from.
And then a further question, if we said, well, let's just don't use the Improve Act, let's just decide we're going to dedicate part of our property tax. Can you explain why that doesn't work, either of you? Because we're going to have to answer our constituents this question, so I'd love to get it from the experts.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me and see me okay here? Yeah, so Michelle's exactly right. So the Improve Act has 6 revenue sources associated with it. The sales tax, far and away, provides the most revenue. The other 5 sources, while they could be a source of that, are very, very small. And we think that, overcoming objections to those would be really challenging in trying to get the bill passed. Michelle's also right that the Improve Act does not allow property taxes to be used for dedicated funding. The most logical way to look at that is that local governments do use their property taxes, general government receipts to fund everyday needs, the streets that we have today, the sidewalks and so forth. But in terms of a dedicated funding source to this scale, it's the Improve Act that we really have to look to.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Next in the queue, I had Councilmember Bradford. Give me 1 second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of quick questions. The biggest one goes to the source of funding, the 0.5 cent increase of sales tax and how that will be impacted. This part of Nashville, this downtown core, the sales taxes and all that money generated stays downtown to help pay off the debt revenue for Music City Center. So my question is on that extra 0.5 cent increase on the sales tax, does that actually go towards this, or does that get stuck paying off Music City Center like everything else?
So the legislation is very clear. This would be dedicated funding that could only be used for transit purposes.
Okay, and the other two questions I had, it was mentioned about expanding the WeGo Star service 7 days a week. Are we looking at making the necessary upgrades to do that, or are we looking at reduction in daily services in order to allow a 7-day schedule?
Steve will answer that. I'm Steve Bland, CEO for WeGo Public Transit. The plan includes the expenses to go to 7-day operation, but in order to expand beyond our current 12-day or 12 trip per day limit, which includes the installation of positive train control, we'd be relying on additional outside partner funding. So that would require an additional funding source. But the transportation improvement plan does include expanded funding to go to 7 days, because basically our 12 trip limit is on a per day basis. So we still have that capacity on the weekends.
Okay, thanks for making that clarification on that. And then the last one, it was talked about looking at some of our intersections and redesigning those. Will you be looking in that design, will you be looking at converting from, a 4-way intersection to utilizing roundabouts?
My apologies. Excuse me.
My name
You
is
are recognized, sir.
Justin Cole with the Nashville Department of Transportation. The 35 intersections that were referred to there were identified in our Vision Zero implementation plan as high injury intersections. Some of those are on the all access corridors. Some of those are on other complete streets projects. And each of those would go through planning and design, either associated with the development of the all access corridors or through the complete streets projects. If you looked more broadly, there's way more intersections than that on those corridors, and all of those, would be overhauled through those corridor projects. But that was just referring to those Vision Zero high injury intersections.
Yeah, this is Brad Freeze from NDOT. I'll just add to what Justin said that when we're going through the design, we will look at nothing's off the table as far as the different strategies that we use at the signals when we look at redesigning. It is meant to be more of a transformational change of the corridors and how we move people.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Bradford. Next in the queue, I've got Councilmember Druffel. Councilmember Druffel, you're recognized.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The question I had is the park and ride. You've listed some park and rides, for example, on White Bridge. Do you have locations yet for those, or is it just a desire to get there?
Again, Steve Bland, WeGo Public Transit. The locations identified on the maps for both transit centers and park and rides are kind of broad locational radius. So at the point in time that the funding mechanism would be approved, then we go into actual site selection. So basically, they're intended for mapping purposes to be this general vicinity, based on our ridership data and other traffic volume information.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Druffel. Next, I have Councilmember Benton. Councilmember Benton, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying I'm a big supporter of public transportation. I had lots of meetings with Mr. Bland, including street safety, walking, biking, and vehicles. I have great confidence that Mr. Bland and Ms. Alarcon will be able to engineer and implement a strong plan. That I got great confidence in. I've seen them at work. In regards to the plan, I noticed in the verbiage that says, the scale of improvements will vary by corridor and location, so we will discuss with residents how to upgrade these corridors to balance reliable transit service with minimal disruption for all users. And I just wanted to say I appreciate that being added in. My question, does the result of a positive referendum become the sole source of funding? And I'm not trying to pick on you, Mr. Bland. Does that become the sole source of funding moving forward for WeGo? Or is there still a budget component plus this additional funding? I have more than one question, but.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and one I think we'll get a lot. And as I was mentioning earlier, we as a metro government today have the funding sources that are really well known to you, and I don't really see those going away. There is some chance that as the plan is developed and we get more dedicated funding, we get more reserves, that we actually will be able to reduce the burden that's on the general taxpayer and shift most all of that to the sales tax component. And on that front, I know the veterans of the council, particularly Councilmember Allen, I know she meant to ask me this question earlier, but, what would be the benefit to a sales tax versus a property tax? And the very simple answer to that, and what's so important to this plan, is that a great deal of those revenues will come from people that don't live here. To try and fund this through a majority of property taxes and so forth would put that burden on our residents, particularly our property owners. With our tourism and so forth, we get to share this burden. By some estimates, that's as much as 60% of the money will come from folks who come here, use our services, and use our infrastructure here. So I know Councilmember Mel meant to ask me that, and so there's your answer.
Just a brief follow-up.
Yes,
it's about the tax thing. For ongoing operations, I know it's the money coming in from the tax was going to be about 111 million, I believe.
111 million would be the cost to operate the system once we fully build it.
Okay, so if that's the case, will the amount that we take in be equal to that for the day-to-day ongoing? Or are we still going to be at a deficit and need some of the outside assistance funding and grants? Does it sustain itself, I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure, and I'm going to give you the short answer to that. And then, as we deliberate this plan in the council, I'm sure there'll be more meetings and we'll put more charts and graphs and trend lines there. But by and large, we need to recognize this is about a 15-year construction project. And like any other construction project, we're going to need dollars up front in order to initiate that before we can actually see the full collection of those revenues. Or once we do build the system, actually have the full content of the cost. And that will not be a steady timeline from the time we start to the time that we finish that. So over time, all of those incoming monies will be important to us. Upfront, the quicker we can begin to collect those taxes, build our coffers, and borrow the dollars that it will take to get this started. As we go through time, of course, our debt will be paid down, our revenues will go up, and we will constantly be looking at a way that we can shift all this dedicated funding so that it really pays for itself. But during this construction period, we will have to have all of those. The only one that I didn't mention during that period is that by going about a dedicated funding mechanism like this, we do make ourselves available for federal funding. And there's a fair number of flavors of those, depending on exactly what we're building and when we are building that. But the bipartisan infrastructure bill and some of the big headlines there really make dollars available to us today, in the future, that we really don't have available to us today without a plan.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next in the queue, I have Councilmember Sepulveda. Councilmember Sepulveda, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions, so if you need to come back to me and give room to somebody else, that's fine. My first question is regarding Nolensville Pike. So out of the 12 all-access corridors, it's the only one not scheduled to begin development and engineering before 2029. Can you speak to that?
So first off, the schedule that's presented in the plan is conceptual in nature. What we're recognizing is that there's ongoing work right now that needs to be taken into account. And that also, as we proceed through the grant application and funding process, that a typical jurisdiction can do perhaps 2 projects simultaneously, which is a big ask, right? We're looking at a city that maybe is 90 years behind in transportation funding and asking you to accomplish 30 years of funding in 15 years. So we've sequenced at least conceptually these particular projects so that you have 2 projects moving through the federal funding cycle simultaneously, and through the construction process simultaneously, and then the next 2 projects progress. Subject to the voters, you would of course have purview to adjust that schedule pending your own project development and priorities.
So it's on us to prioritize, or it's on y'all? I mean,
It's
I'm
on you.
wondering, it's on us, okay.
Correct.
Because I would move that way up.
You would do that in negotiation with NDOT and with MTA.
All right, I'll reach out. Thank you. And then,
Councilmember, if I can jump on that one, the only one that I would say is hard-coded in sequence is Murfreesboro Pike Corridor to go number one, because in the previous administration, number one, it's our top ridership corridor, and it kind of ranked out highest in the various high-capacity transit studies in terms of ridership potential, and also access to right-of-way. Some of the corridors like Nolensville, Charlotte, Dickerson have more constrained right-of-way, and in working with TDOT, that's going to be an important consideration. And I would say beyond that, and Michael touched on it in his remarks, that, there is fluidity in the process. So for sure, we'll be engaging with the community, really as early as this coming year to identify and quote, reorganize those priorities.
And on your question, we'd like to go over to the to NDOT as well. And I've just got kind of both mics hot, so it might be the questions come. And right now it seems to be working. But if you want a specific department or person to address your question, just let us know, and we'll make sure it gets over to them. But I'll recognize NDOT director.
Thank you very much. Also, Councilmember, if you remember, we were successful with getting the Safe Streets for All grant. So if there's opportunities to leverage those together, we will be taking advantage of that as well.
great, thank you. My second question is regarding language access. And I did hear the part of, as you do these community events, having things in multiple languages. But my question specifically is language access for this plan, for the bus stops, for the material, for the signage. Is there any plans to have directionals in multiple languages?
Mr. Briggs, do you want to?
I'm actually going to, I think, look to Steve if they've been contemplating that with the existing WeGo.
Do you mean in terms of like bus stop signs?
Yeah, bus stop signs.
Bus stop signs, generally, we're relying on the graphic that Felix showed, and then the QR code being the way to guide to a website for, frankly, multi-ethnic, multilingual considerations.
So the website will be in multiple languages.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, and it is now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would like to know how many of those languages, and then we have such a large growing indigenous population. And so I made this comment when I was meeting with the office regarding, having more picture signage. That might be a way to try and incorporate, just like this, right? Multiple languages in one. We have a hard time finding translators for indigenous communities, and we're seeing a big problem in our public schools and courts. And so I just wanted to make sure that was on y'all's radar.
Certainly.
Okay. And then the Edmondson line, I didn't see that in the map. We used to have a connector to Edmondson, right? We have a library there. We have a park there. Is there room to make sure that's included?
Yeah, and again, I'll speak to the fluidity that Michael referenced in his remarks. There are targeted, and we're happy to sit down with any council member at the district level to talk about specifics in a district. They're basically hours set-asides for South and Southeast Nashville. So that planning can occur, again, based on that community input. So rather than looking at those lines on a map and thinking they're hardwired like a rail line might be, there is that flexibility. You'll see in the details of the plan, Southeast Connector Route number 1, Southeast Connector Route number 2. So that it would be kind of like when we were back doing the N-Motion plan, there was absolutely no one envisioned the East Bank development at all. So, we're not so hardwired in that changing development patterns, would preclude that. Or, what we're looking at in Southeast Nashville, Antioch area, there was no contemplation at that point in time of Century Farms developing. And now we're looking at how we deliver service to that area. So I think when you look at individual bus routes, particularly the local connector crosstowns, those are very fluid and will likely change, certainly over the 15-year build-out period.
Got it. And then my last question, Chair, for now. Sidewalks. It already takes years to build sidewalks, right? Has there been consideration to break down the sidewalk contracts to smaller contracts to try and expedite this process? Or is there any strategy? Because when I was first elected, I think a sidewalk was approved maybe a year before, and now it's getting built. And there's still some really outstanding ones. And I know that there's so many other agencies you have to coordinate with. So taking into consideration this timeline, has there been any consideration for tactics to try and speed up that process?
Yes, ma'am. Most definitely. We've currently already started the process where we have multiple contracts on, and the different contracts are given assignments of sidewalks so that we've been able to get as much built as we've had. So we will actually expedite that as we continue to move forward through the referendum as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next in the queue, and is there anybody looking to get in the queue who has not spoken yet? Eastlick, gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, great. So next in the queue, we have Councilmember Cash. Councilmember Cash, you are recognized.
Thanks. I've got kind of 3 areas, so stop me if you need to. First, I want to ask about, I'm liking the plans for my district about WeGo expansion and additional service. I'm curious about, I'm assuming that part of the plan is to make the transit routes easier and faster for people who are already riding, but I'm also assuming that we want to increase ridership. And I'm wondering if that we're anticipating any increased revenue aside from the sales tax increase on ticket purchases. And also along with that, are we, especially since we're looking at what has already been termed kind of a regressive tax that's going to hurt low-income people the most. I know we have, some lowered rates for certain folks like over 65 and disabled, and I think there's one more category maybe on Medicare. Are there any plans for additional subsidies for those who are lower income to ride a little less expensively?
Sure. Steve Bland from WeGo Public Transit again. I'll answer the first couple, then I'll introduce Amanda Benegriff from InfraStrategies, who did a lot of the financial plan. First of all, with respect to the low-income fare subsidies, yes, that is cooked into the plan that persons on low-income Davidson County residents can qualify for free bus passes, similar to the programs we have, say, with Metro Nashville Public Schools now, the Homeless Impact Division. So that would be a much broader program for those who are, kind of in those social safety net areas now. Second of all, yes, besides the sales tax surcharge, the financial plan counts on increased operating revenues overall, including fares, and also increased shares as our service and our ridership grows. We would get increased shares of our federal formula dollars, so that would go up. And then on the capital side, I think Sham and Michael both referred to the federal capital investment grant program that we would expect to leverage. But Amanda could probably off the top of her head give you much greater detail than that.
Well, Steve, I think you covered most of it already, but I will say we looked at WeGo's existing financial plan and we projected what fare revenue would be for new services, looking at your fare box recovery today by mode. And then we also looked at, like Steve said, the federal formula funds that WeGo receives today, and assuming if you operate more service, you will receive more federal formula funds. And then finally, the biggest federal pot is the capital investment grant program. So that's it.
Thanks. And just to add, I hope that if we're going to, help some folks get some either free rides or cheaper rides, that we don't make the bureaucratic red tape for them to call, like we make that as simple as we can and not think, oh, that's going to be so much trouble. I'm just not going to. Also, I want to kind of, I guess, ask a quick question about housing, and I don't need us to go deeply into this, but it's been occurring to me and definitely occurred to me today when we were looking at the kind of 6 strategies. I know in my fairly old district, I got a number, like within a half a mile of me, I know I've got at least 6 houses that have been empty for over a decade. I can think of 2 real quick that have been empty for probably 30 years. And I'm just curious because I saw, kind of like expand housing and keep housing, and like in that list, do we have any strategy for encouraging people who are just letting unused property sit there year after year, decade after decade, to get those in the housing market?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for that question. That's one of the purposes of standing up the Catalyst Fund, to give those mission-driven affordable housing developers the opportunity to purchase those. Oftentimes, those are owned by out-of-town investors, and however we can get them to the table to sell at a reasonable price to a mission-driven developer who can then either rehab it or construct something new there, but that is one of our strategies.
Thank you. And last, about sidewalks, the 2 short areas I'm seeing for the planned sidewalks in my district are just, I feel like they're different from what my constituents have been telling me and what I've been asking for a while. So at some point, I'd like to have a conversation about that specifically, but also like are we using walk bike to determine where the sidewalk priorities are mainly?
Yeah, and I'll echo some of the earlier comments that there's opportunities for us to shift projects around to some extent. I'll also note that we were balancing what we can achieve through regular capital spending plan with what we can achieve through the program. So there could be a project that you're not seeing on there that we're able to accelerate and do faster through regular capital spending program because we have this new revenue source to fund other projects. So, but happy to sit down and talk about.
Great, because I am going to get that question. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next in the queue, I have Councilmember Spain. Councilmember Spain, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. I do have some district-specific questions that I'll save to ask you separately. And my general questions, I think, have already been answered, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, I have Councilmember Vo in the queue. Councilmember Vo, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just like Councilmember Cash, my constituents have already asked me about why certain streets are on the plan. And so can we get clarity, or like, for example, if there are projects already in the pipeline, and then if not, how can we help constituents see the difference in what is going to be in the plan over the next 15 years and what's already in the pipeline? Can someone answer that, and how we can better address that?
The planning table, yes.
So the interactive map that Michael shared earlier does have everything that we're currently working on through our current work plan on there. And then you will see the projects that are included as part of the TIP in addition to that. That is, like Michael shared earlier, much of that is coming from our priority sidewalk network and other projects that have been prioritized for, connecting to transit, in those half-mile and quarter-mile buffers that were referred to earlier. So I think that should help, but what I would also note is that, this enables us to sort of prioritize new projects. So our next work plan will include projects that are, using the same prioritization methodology to try to build, sidewalks in more places. So you will be working on a new walk and bike work plan later this year, I believe. So we'll be able to fill in more of those gaps through that effort. But certainly always, eager to hear where you all see needs.
Great, thank you so much. In regards to safety, can you all talk to where crosswalks, I've had a lot of requests for crosswalks. So is there a prioritization for our schools and daycares? And could y'all talk a little bit more about that?
So, so this might be a little bit outside of the program. We're actually currently working on a pedestrian crossing policy. And that policy looks at essentially, should we put a crosswalk here and what should that crosswalk look like to make sure that it's, safe for all users. So that's a project we're going on. All of the projects that we're doing, in this referendum are going to take a complete streets approach, are going to be looking at how do we maximize safety and access to destinations. And so we have a new complete streets implementation guide that's on our website. We're working on this pedestrian crossing policy. These will be documents that will guide us as we're doing all of these projects to make sure that we're improving safety and improving access across communities.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next in the queue, I have Councilmember Coopin. Councilmember Coopin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you all for being here and for the hard work y'all are doing on this plan. It's really exciting to see transit come to Nashville in this way. A couple of questions. I'll try to be quick. One of the biggest challenges when I talk to my north neighborhoods as to why they don't use the bus is the lack of connectivity from north to south. And we jokingly say that the bus right now gets us from north to less north. So is there, and I can't tell if the lines connect or don't connect or might connect, but is there consideration for bus service that goes down Rosa Parks and then goes all the way through to the south side, or is that Rosa Parks line still going to Wego Central?
Sure. Thanks, Council Member. I know you were intimately involved in the Connect Downtown work as well. So this plan would allow us to expedite the funding of the projects in Connect Downtown. That includes the 3-hub kind of downtown with a sort of looping transit priority corridor. So the service theory behind that is essentially you would enter downtown at the nearest point and circulate through that priority corridor to the furthest point. So for instance, a bus coming in Murfreesboro Pike corridor would at least hit the Sobro hub. We go around West Side Access, we go central and over to the East Bank hub to get you through the entire downtown core. Ultimately, as we build out transit centers, we can even look at through routing where maybe a Murfreesboro Pike bus becomes a Gallatin Pike bus or something along those lines. So the direct answer to your question is at full build out, yeah, those connections would happen. That bus coming out of the Bordeaux route would come through downtown and basically connect those various points downtown.
Thank you. I know we've touched on it a little bit, so I'm hopefully not redundant on this, but can we speak to the federal funds unlocked by a transit referendum? What I'm hearing is that by passing a local direct source of funding or dedicated funding, that would unlock the opportunity to participate in federal funds. So can someone speak to that kind of unlocking and that cascade effect?
Sure. Again, Steve Bland, and I'll ask Amanda to give me hand signals if I'm saying something incorrect. The biggest source, so we wanted to take a relatively conservative financial approach, and Director Crumbo pointed out there's a myriad of federal funding opportunities under the infrastructure bill. But the one we really honed in on is referred to as the Capital Investment Grant Program, and we would anticipate leveraging considerable amounts of that program in those all-access corridors. But there are still a whole bunch of other programs that, frankly, we've had some success in the past with obtaining. So, the effort would be to basically package the projects in a way that they were most attractive to federal sources, whether that be through RAISE grants, CRISI grants, you name it. For whatever those types of projects are. So we're cautiously optimistic, but not to the point of wanting to cook it into the plan of being able to access even more dollars. Now, of course, all that relies on a continuing robust level of federal support for transportation programs. And in addition to that, we haven't assumed a whole lot of state participation in projects, and we've had some success, for instance, on North Nashville Transit Center, as an example, is getting considerable state support for that project.
Thank you. And last question. We've got an extensive Greenway network in the core and throughout our city. Have we looked at how the Greenway network connectivity plugs into this transit plan and bus stop access and things like that, or is that something maybe coming later?
I was gonna say, I can also help answer, and Kendra also on our staff can fill in, because, do you want to step up? Because you had conversations with Parks.
Yeah, so as mentioned before, our technical advisory committee has been regularly convening, and we do have 2 representatives from Greenways on that committee. And so we've been looking really closely at how elements within this transportation improvement program increase access to our greenways. And then the next step is looking at more of that connectivity picture. So again, how is that increased access then unlocking more connectivity across the city? And so I'd say it's somewhere in between. It's happening. We're mapping the connections between those systems. But in the future, we'll be looking much more closely at how our greenways can be used to connect areas of the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. We've got a few more folks in the queue. Is anybody looking to jump into the queue who has not spoken yet? Because we'll put you, Councilmember Sepulveda will put you in the second round after. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Porterfield, I've got you next in the queue. You are recognized.
Thank you so very much, Chair, and thank you all for this very wonderful presentation, very robust. I'm extremely excited about this, very excited to bring meaningful transit to Nashville. So just a few questions. Have you all discussed at all the ticket prices, or what are we thinking for the ridership prices?
The financial plan assumes current fare levels at a basic level. But again, coming back to, I think it was Councilmember Cash's question, that there is built-in funding to provide low-income fare subsidies.
That is what I love to hear. Thank you. And then I had a question about, and forgive me if this has already been sent out. I've been traveling, so I haven't had a chance to dig into this plan yet. And I'm just using Southeast as an example because that's what I am most intimately aware with. But right now, the bus service goes down Murfreesboro Road, the 55, stops at Bell Road, and then goes down Bell Road. So it doesn't go like from Bell Road to the county, and it doesn't go into like our neighborhood. So if you live in Priest Lake area, or for example, when my daughter catches the bus, I have to drive her 7 minutes to get to a bus stop. Does this plan increase bus services into the neighborhoods, and does it give more bus service to people that are closer to county lines?
So a couple pieces of the plan. There are additional hours, and I believe they're spelled out in the plan document, the percentage increase in things like circulator routes, neighborhood circulators, crosstowns, route extensions. The other thing that's provided for here, I know that both Michael and Felix kind of walked through the WeGo Link program. There are 13 zones currently. Basically, we would fill in pretty much every part of the county that doesn't have good fixed route coverage. So even areas as far out as Jolton would have, that type of coverage. And then the additionals that Michael touched on are those express routes that would basically go to the county line to areas like Rivergate, Antioch, Jolton, Bellevue, that in the future our other outlying county partners could connect to. But then those would be designed as more express type services with, robust connections, not just to park and ride, but also to connecting routes in, say, the southeastern part of the county or up in Madison or what have you. And,
awesome.
And again, we'd be happy to sit down with any council member and talk specifics about a district.
Thank you. And I apologize. I came in late, so I missed that part of the presentation. Also, are we expanding, I'm assuming, covered bus stops and bus shelters? I'm assuming that's part of the plan. Okay, I'm seeing head nods, so that's good enough for me. And then the last thing is I wanted to second and lift up Councilmember Sepulveda's request about the signages in multiple languages. If we can go back to the slide with the QR code, 2 things that I would like to highlight. It's a misconception that everyone's smartphone reads QR codes. Everyone's smartphone doesn't. And I know you just open your camera. Not every smartphone, you can just open the camera. Some of them you have to actually download a QR reader. So if you all could put the website below the QR reader, similarly to how it was done on this document. That would be helpful for individuals who don't have a QR reader on their phone. But also, even where it says like to downtown or to Rivergate, if we can have those in another language as well, maybe on the back side of the sign, so that if an individual reads another language, they're able to see it, even if they don't have access to a cell phone with a QR reader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Got a couple more folks in the first round of the queue, and then I have a few questions. We'll go to Councilmember Eastlick. Councilmember Eastlick, you're recognized.
Thank you. To me, the part of the plan that would affect and help the most drivers or riders is the smart signals. Looking at the plan, it says some in the beginning, about a quarter of them by 5 years, and then 15 years later, it looks like it'll come to completion. What's the process or the plan to try to get those implemented, and what would make that take so long to get them pushed in? Because again, this would not only help the people that are driving cars, but it would also help the mass transit as well, making everything flow better.
Yes, great question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this Brad from NDOT. So good question. There's a lot that goes into just the signal upgrades themselves. Instead of just upgrading one particular location, it also includes the communication network. We are laying 50 miles of fiber optic communication as part of this as well. That's critical when we talk about the centralized control that we want to do to run some of the software systems that are dependent upon when we talk about the smart signals and the adaptive technology and more the traffic responsive technology that we're going to do. So there is a lot to it. There's also the signal detection as well needs to be upgraded on all the approaches. There's a lot that goes into that as well. So there are some more strategic upgrades that we will do as far as our TMC and our operations and how we run our day-to-day operations and how we can monitor our systems that will have an impact on the entire system.
Will the fiber that you're laying be in the ground, or would that be overhead? I just went through a ton in my neighborhood where Google cut the road up, and that's left some of the road in worse shape than when it started.
Right now, overhead is the pathway that we're choosing, but some of that could vary in certain locations.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
All right, next in the queue, I have Councilmember Ellis. Councilmember Ellis, you're recognized.
Thank you. So the thing that I'm having a hard time with my the people that I represent is the sales tax increase. If you could just speak to like why that's the best option, taking out the property like aside from the property tax. So someone had mentioned, can there be like a tourism tax or some sort of fee that can only be centered to people that are, concentrated in the downtown area?
Yeah, I couldn't hear all of your question there, but just to back up a little bit, property tax is not an option under the Improve Act. The Improve Act has 6 different sources of revenue. Sales tax is far and away the greatest generator of that, and the one that we really need to do this plan. The others are so small relative to that, we couldn't afford this plan using those. And they're small enough that even trying to offset a little bit is just going to invite more and more controversy to the ballot, frankly, because we are already hitting hotel, motel, and some of the other things that may be allowed really hard for other purposes here in the city. So we've made the choice that it's the easiest for the voters to vote for one single source of revenue. And again, about 60% of that, by some measures, will come from folks that do not live here, but still come here, visit us, use our infrastructure, and so forth.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
And the second question that I have, and the last question is, when we get the financial analysis, will it have...
Ms. Ellis, if you would put the mic
Sorry.
up. Thank you.
Yes, I
appreciate it.
Will there be like a line item showing how much each of these elements cost? Like for the smart signals, will it show how much that portion of the plan will cost?
Yeah, so again, this is like any other large project where, there is costing information down to the very last dollar. And so depending on what format may be attractive to you, we'll do our best to make that information available to you. Did you have?
And there is also a listing of costs by category in the plan in the implementation section.
Sorry, just one more question.
Sure.
So what is the solid plan that we're able to present and talk to residents about? Does that exist?
Are you talking about just a solid description of the entire plan that we're discussing here, or specifically to the financial plan? Or
A plan that impacts the district itself. So I know that there was a couple of different drafts that were sort of surfaced out, but what's the final plan that residents should be considering? Like, where can we find that?
Michael, do you want to talk about where those are posted and what's exactly available?
Yes. So, sorry, I'm dealing also with a error box on the laptop. There we go. So definitely go to nashville.gov/transit. It has all the draft, or it has the document. It has what were the draft impact maps that have now been transported over into the interactive maps. And you can zoom in to your district and look at it at a street level.
But are those drafts, or is that like the final plan?
This is the final plan. You may see something like I mentioned the park and rides. We had a mapping issue where that didn't get aligned. There may be things like that get aligned with what's been submitted to independent audit and eventually to the state comptroller. But at this point, nothing changes with the program.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellis. I had a couple of clarifying questions and specific questions here. So this was covered in a previous question, but I just wanted to clarify. I think it was Councilmember Bradford asked. So none of the various sales tax capture districts that exist would be capturing any portion of this additional. I'm getting a head nod yes from Director Crumbo over there. So just to be clear to the public, the tax surcharge would not get picked up by, say, the East Bank sales tax capture or the tourism development zone that finances the convention center downtown. I wanted to circle back and highlight something Councilmember Cash touched on. It's great that we're going to have a low-income subsidy here where folks can have access to the system for free or reduced fares. My ask, having worked with some folks on navigating bureaucracy and means-tested systems, if we can make that as low barrier as possible, I think it would be a benefit to the program overall. I would rather err on the side of seeing some folks who may be considered less deserving by some having access to it than the side of oh, well, you don't have a state-issued ID, so we're not going to make it work for you, or you don't have documentation of your income, so we can't make it work for you, or things like that. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but I would just ask that we do our best to make that aspect as low barrier as possible. One very specific question, looking at the West End BRT, I was wondering why. I see that it looks like it stops at the connector rather than getting out to Murphy Road, where we've got a good bit of higher density development already and more slated. Is that for that specific piece, was that a ridership consideration? Is that a right-of-way constraint, or what was the thinking with the BRT only running out to the connector there?
Steve Bland from WeGo again. In large part, it was looking at ridership patterns, but to be frank, it was also looking, basically the way we costed some of the improvements was on a per mile basis relative to the intensity of the improvement, and at some point it was just sort of weighing where those costs would go. What will happen with each of these corridors is they'll go into, so if the initiative is approved, they go into various levels of corridor planning. So when we actually do corridor planning on or Murfreesboro or Nolensville Pikes, there will be a lot more expansive conversation with those communities about what that specific project would look like.
Excellent, thank you. And a couple other quick questions. The federal funding, we've discussed how the dedicated revenue can kind of help unlock that possibility. So who will be responsible for pursuing federal funding? Would that be WEGO? Are we working with GNRC on that? Is it the mayor's office? Is it NDOT? Who is owning that if this moves forward?
I'll start, and I suspect Director Alarcon will pick up as well. The direct answer is any and all of the above, depending on the program. Generally, WEGO is the conduit to Federal Transit Administration funding, and the Capital Investment Grant Program that Amanda referenced, which is the key to a lot of these all-access corridors, is an FTA program. So we would likely be pursuing that. And the direct impact of the dedicated funding piece, so to when you enter that process, Federal Transit Administration has a number of ranking criteria for projects. And it's the things you might expect. It's, what level of ridership can you achieve? How does it support some of the socioeconomically disadvantaged neighborhoods? But one of the key criteria is local financial commitment. And the challenge is to really score high on that. You either need the dedicated source or you need to have the local money in hand to be able to demonstrate that commitment. So that's how it helps in that realm. But frankly, whether it's ourselves, Metro Planning, NDOT, GNRC, we'll look to a whole lot of those categories. So I don't know if Director Alarcon has anything she would add to that.
We can go to Director Alarcon if we want. I also see from the administration.
My answer was going to be all of the above.
Okay.
So I'm right in line with Steve. I think the dedicated funding allows us to leverage some of those federal opportunities that we probably would not have without the dedicated funding. So whatever opportunities we have, we're going to leverage and go.
Excellent, thank you. And if you'd please introduce yourself.
Yeah, Kendra Abquitz. So we've also started coordinating a quarterly transportation grants meeting between all of those agencies and have had the discussion. Here to date, it's essentially been a discussion about upcoming grant opportunities and what projects we might want to put into a potential proposal. What we've talked about doing is once this transportation improvement program is developed, actually kind of turning that on its side and saying, hey, we have a really robust set of projects that we know we want to get funded. Federal government agencies, funding agencies that touch these types of projects, help us strategize around how we can get these projects funded.
Thank you. And I guess my last question on the federal funding piece, we know that some of these opportunities are potentially limited in time frame, like specifically some of the infrastructure dollars that are out there right now through the Biden administration. So let's say this gets approved on November 5th. Tax collections begin, I saw February 1st of 2025. So would we be able to use projections to go ahead and put in for, say, something that has a deadline of the end of the year of fiscal or of actual calendar year 24? I hope that made sense. Like, can we?
Yeah.
Before February 1st, can we put an application in?
Amanda Vandergrift, Infrastrategies. Yes, I think the answer is yes. There are ongoing NOFOs or notice of funding opportunities out right now. So as you have committed funding, you can begin competing for those funds and bringing them into Nashville. I also will say, as soon as you have committed funding, you can start advancing your first transit corridors into the Capital Investment Grant Program, which then gets you started in the process of allowing anything you spend to be eligible for reimbursement by the federal government. And I'll also mention the 2026 number. That's real. That is a deadline. But I will say, if you look historically, we've never really hit that deadline and then had a brand new bill passed by Congress. That has been kicked down the road several years. So if history is repeating itself, which it probably will, we maybe have a few more years to potentially have that kind of funding continued. And it's never gone down. So I think we are assuming conservatively that that kind of funding would continue for the 15-year period, and you'd be in line to receive it.
Thank you. That's super helpful context. And one other thing that I found very helpful from this presentation was when y'all talked about the figure of 600 signals, which I had heard that figure a lot, but I had not heard the figure that we have 900 signals in the county. So that's helpful for me for talking to folks to say this program includes, 2/3 of the signals. So that's a very just easy to communicate thing. Looking at the bus shelter improvements, we had the figure of 285. Is that, I think maybe a useful figure to communicate would be including ones that are sheltered today plus the 285, like what proportion of our bus stops would that cover? And if y'all don't have that information today, maybe we could put it in an FAQ on the website or something just so people have easy access to it.
Yes, this is Hannah Schaefer with We Go Public Transit. Although the 285 number really doesn't cover a large proportion of our bus stops, it does cover the majority of our boardings. So currently, with our shelter network as it stands, 73% of our passengers are boarding undercover. So what this program will do will raise that number to closer to 85 to 90% of our boardings. So, and the fact of the matter is shelters are expensive. The infrastructure to support those shelters are expensive. So we prioritize based on, based on those high ridership volumes. So that's where that program is developed, is through those ridership numbers.
Thank you. Yes, I just remembered that that's how y'all report it in your quarterly data. So that's helpful context. I see Director Crumbo. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so with the questions you've had in the last few here, there's some, I think, some overarching themes that are developing here, particularly on the financial front. So if you allow me a moment, maybe I could address some of those and it would, release some of the questions. And
yes, sir.
These are in no particular order, but we are using the term right now about unlocking federal funding and having access to things. I think for many of you here, particularly veterans of the council, you'll remember when we formed NDOT. And when we have formed other entities, right, where we have said, once we form that, then we have the counterpart and the eligibility to really apply, right? So in this case, when we look around the country, we're only one of 4 cities of the top 50 remaining that does not have this type of dedicated funding and therefore can unlock it. And so each day that goes by that we don't have it, we're really losing federal dollars to other cities that we're competing for economic development and so forth. And so this really just adds to our stack of tools, and that is what we mean really by unlocking things here. Another theme that seems to be developing, and I'm looking at Councilmember Porterfield here, which, by the way, welcome home. I know you've been traveling overseas. We're glad to have you back. In terms of access to the system, there have been a few questions here about access for seniors or perhaps those who are disabled, so forth. And if we expand that, what I can say is that we as a city government and those who run it each day will be extremely motivated to make sure that that happens, because if we fail to bring forward this plan, we're going to be in an economic disadvantage to the other cities that I mentioned. And so for our economy to really grow and continue to thrive, we need to get people around. Right, that's what the whole theme of this is. So getting folks in and out of our system, people that work here every day, people that tour here every day and so forth, we're going to be extremely motivated to have that happen. So all the ideas, whether they're barcodes today or some technology of the future, I think is a theme. We're going to be really motivated to do that. And same with Councilmember Sepulveda for communicating in numerous languages and making sure that all of our visitors have that equal access. And then the last piece that is striking to me is that we're talking a bit about the sales tax increase not being a regressive tax. And, by any standard, I think we could say that's true relative to a property tax or some other form. Here, I would remind that if we put the map up there that has all of the surrounding counties, our tax today is still a little bit lower than all but two of those, right? And so as we look to add to this, it'll really bring us on parity to what, the rest of our surrounding economy really does pay today. And for that, we get the incredible value that is this plan. So I am very excited about that. It's hard to say you're excited about raising taxes, and I'm a taxpayer. I'll end up paying that like everyone else does, but there is a value on the other side of this, and I really don't look at it as a cost at all. I look at it as an investment in our economy here, and so I hope that as we bring this to a close that you'll share that enthusiasm.
Thank you, Director Crumbo. And so I've got a couple of people in the queue for a second round, and we will try to get to that. We will get to that, but I do just want to ask folks, we were scheduled to be here till 6:30 at the latest. We have council staff still here. We have lots of senior staff and directors here with various departments, and they were kind enough to come answer some questions for us. So if we can try to be brief with the second round, if everyone would please indulge. Thank you. First, I had Councilmember Sepulveda. Councilmember, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick. Just two quick questions. For the dedicated bus lanes, just taking into example Nolensville corridor, there's already a bike lane there, right? Does that get improved? Will there be, barriers, et cetera? What will that look like for any of the corridors that will have dedicated bus lanes?
Yeah, I can quickly address that. So each corridor is going to look different. We still have to do the preliminary engineering on each corridor. So just depending on the right-of-way that's there, the current existing lane configuration, how wide the lanes are, will ultimately end up being the solution. So there's things like narrowing lanes, using a shoulder that may be repurposed for part of a traffic lane. So right now we simply just don't have enough detail on that because the preliminary engineering hasn't been done.
Okay. Last question. For some of these on-site facilities, have there been locations already scouted out to house them? Because again, using Nolensville as an example, I see in the map where you all are thinking of having it, and knowing what's around there, and knowing it's supposed to be 1,000 square feet building and surface parking, et cetera. Have there been locations that have been looked at for them?
Yeah, the locations are still conceptual, so nothing has been identified.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next in round two, I had Councilmember Vo. Councilmember Vo.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'll be quick. Just for the public, can you all speak to why or how you got to the half cent? Maybe not 1 cent. If you could just talk through that quickly, because I do think I'm going to get those questions.
Director.
Yeah, so the size and scale of the plan that you see here matches up to the half cent sales tax increase. And again, that would bring us, on parity with the surrounding counties. And so as we looked at the all-in value of the plan relative to the tax that would be relative to it, that's how it was sized.
Okay, thank you. And then two, can you give us a timeline for feedback as we talk to our constituents so that I know that this is still living and breathing. And so just to give us kind of a timeline for that.
Yeah. So to be really clear, this is a program. So it's not a plan where we go back, reiterate things, adjust, and come back to you with changes. So it's locked in at this moment because it's with an independent audit. Has to go to the state comptroller and then go through the council process to be put on the ballot. So what you've got there is locked in terms of the financial program and the projects that we can deliver with this program.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Director Crumbo, yes, if you've got a comment.
Yeah, so let me help a little bit with that. And I've heard the comptroller mentioned here a few times, right? So For those that may be less familiar, the state comptroller does have oversight of plans like we have here today. So the process for that is we have to engage an independent auditor to audit this plan. That requires us to put a stake in the ground and say, this is our plan, and it's going to be subject to audit. Kraft CPAs is doing that audit. That work is ongoing, but expected to be completed here actually in the next several days. We will then make that audit available to the comptroller. There's been a lot of coordination already between our two offices, and the comptroller have most of the month of May to review that plan, come back to us with any feedback. We're really not expecting on the heels of an audit that the comptroller will have a lot of feedback there. That would be, somewhat unusual, but certainly they want to coordinate their knowledge of this, their oversight of us, with what the state does. Don't forget, too, that the state has its own transportation programs. So for us, that is a very, very important timeline, because this is a very quick timeline to have started this plan, put it together, get it through the comptroller's office, and then have the summertime here to really start putting the plan ready for the ballot. And I will say here very publicly, we are so very thankful for the comptroller for working with us on this timeline. I cannot imagine how busy that office has been with the busy state legislative session here the last several weeks. They're graciously going to make time available for us in May to get this plan through. So if they are listening there, thank you, comptroller office, for that. Because we'll not only have this coming to you, but we can't forget that little thing called the Metro budget that we're going to start deliberating on May 1st, as well as our debt arrangements and other things that office really does to support us here. So I hope that helps a little bit with the timeline, Councilmember Vo, and why we've got to drive a stake in the ground for it.
And back to you, Mr. Briggs.
Yep, and one thing that I'll just expand on, so it's locked in up to the ballot. So we kind of have to do this dance where we are responding to the state enabling legislation, have it audited and certified by the comptroller. So then once we begin leveraging funds and are able to act on the program, there is some flexibility for things to change and evolve over the life of the program.
Thank you. All right, and last we have Councilmember Porterfield. Councilmember Porterfield.
Thank you, Chair. I will also be brief, and thank you, Director Crumbo, for that warm welcome. And again, I apologize if this was already stated. I came here as quickly as I could from the airport, actually. When I was out of the country, one thing that I noticed was that so much was centered around usability for people and making sure that things were convenient for people. And I think about how we structure things here. And it made me think about like our bus shelters. So with the new bus shelters that will be built and with any upgrades that we may have, are you all, I know the plan itself is a solid plan, but is there space to get community feedback and input for the things that they would like to see in their bus shelters and in any of like the transit, any of the transit centers? And what I'm envisioning is, personally, I charge my cell phone every night, and by midday, my cell phone's dead. So like if I'm waiting on the bus, it would be very helpful if there was somewhere that I could charge my cell phone, a regular socket, a USB socket. I want to make sure that it's well lit and that the trash is cleaned up. And I know I've spoken with you all directly about, trash at some of the transit sites, and you all do a great job of getting that cleaned up, getting graffiti cleaned up on a really quick basis. But I'm just thinking about the things that people will need to make it more accessible for them and make it more desirable for people to ride it.
Sure. Steve Bland from WeGo again. So let me distinguish the stop and shelter improvements. The shelters tend to be pretty modular, and the sites vary with the electric capabilities and also based on boarding counts. So generally speaking, yeah, we'd love to work with the community, on those types of things. The level of amenities may depend on whether we can electrify or not. Transit centers, park and rides, the larger facilities are another matter, and I think folks could look to what we did with the North Nashville community on the Dr. Ernest Rip Patton Center. When you hopefully you'll all come to the dedication coming up in June. But when you see the level of public art, the historical markers that were really a direct result of community input, it would be our expectation that that's how we'll handle all of these projects, whether that's in Antioch or Donaldson or Madison, that there would be a heavy amount of community input. And frankly, with kudos to council members Taylor and Toombs, they really spearheaded that effort up in North Nashville for us. So we would certainly look to our district council members in particular to help us lead that effort.
Thank you. And just one follow-up idea too. Councilwoman Soror had a Youth and Government Day here, and we had some high schoolers present proposals, and one of the groups, and forgive me, I can't remember if it was the mayor's youth council or one of the high schools, but they talked about food deserts and providing food in the communities. And one of the ideas that they had was similar to like small, like farmers markets in the transit centers, or just a place where people could access those transit centers for like fresh fruits and vegetables. So you're nodding your head. So I guess you all are already considering that. So thank you for considering it, and thumbs up from me. I think that's a great idea. So thanks for considering.
Okay, well, thanks everybody so much for joining us. We've run nearly half an hour over time, and I do again appreciate everybody, ITS, council staff, and all the folks from different departments who came here to talk to us today for hanging late with us. If individual council members have specific questions, Mr. Briggs, can I point them your direction to as a starting point, and Mr. Briggs can connect you with whoever you need to connect with. You do have a .gov, right? Yeah, it's just michael.briggs@nashville.gov. So please reach out to me if you want to set up a meeting or have any questions. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us on a non-council Tuesday evening.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.